Behind every screen is an assigned decision. Behind every decision is a responsibility to make technology usable for everyone. From screen readers to keyboard navigation, color contrast to cognitive load, the range of considerations is vast and vital. Jessica McCall from the Esri accessibility team joins us to explore what digital accessibility means, how teams can approach it with intention, and what the future holds for accessible innovation. Whether you're a developer, designer, or just curious about how tech can be more human centered, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Geographical Thinking. I'm Michelle Brake, and I'll be your guide as we explore ideas, stories, and conversations through the lens of geography. Thank you for joining me today, Jessica, and welcome to Geographical Thinking.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
How's it going in your part of the world today? I know we're well into fall season. Are we getting into that chilly sweater season yet?
I'm located in Texas and it is not fall officially yet. Still dealing with some heat, but definitely enjoying, working at Esri on accessibility. So I'm loving that we're talking about that today.
Fantastic. Looking forward to diving in. To get us started, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Esri for about 6 years, and my role right now is that I'm the Senior Accessibility Project Manager for our centralized accessibility program. And my role encompasses a few different aspects of our work on supporting accessibility. So first of all, I work to understand the requirements for accessibility in Esri products. I meet with customers. I'm looking to understand their needs. I'm reviewing technical and legal requirements. And then I'm meeting with product teams and educating our Esri product managers and development teams and engineers so that I can communicate all those requirements and make sure that our products are meeting all the different standards that we are observing. And then I also serve as a project manager for a variety of different projects that we're working on, mostly with our testing teams that are testing Esri products for accessibility. But really, my overall goal is that I am looking to understand the requirements for accessibility in Esri products and then support all the work that's needed to make those products more accessible.
Okay, and that's a wide range of tasks and things that fall under that umbrella of accessibility. For those who may be unfamiliar, what is digital accessibility and why does it matter in today's tech landscape?
Definitely. Digital accessibility is really important to people that have impairments or disability, but the goal is to support all the different ways that we use technology. Everybody kind of can use technology in a different way. So people who may have different impairments, maybe they have a vision impairment or a hearing disability, maybe a movement or physical, cognitive, or speech impairment, and they might be using technology in a way that's different from the way that I use it or that you use it. Um, the impairments can be permanent, they could be temporary, they could be situational, and people with these impairments just they need a different way to interact with technology that better supports them and it helps them to really overcome barriers that can be present due to all the different impairments that they face. So the way that digital accessibility is important is because some people with disabilities are using maybe an assistive technology to help them navigate any barriers in technology. This could be something really simple, screen magnification. Maybe you've magnified the text on your phone, keyboard navigation, but it could be things that are more advanced, like using a screen reader or maybe using eye tracking software. And some of these technologies um, might be something that we're already using in everyday life. I mean, I like to watch the TV with captions on, and captions is definitely an assistive technology. So, all of these functions require us to focus on digital accessibility principles to support people who are using technology.
And I think that example of watching TV with the captions on is a great example. I know I personally do because it helps me hear better. When we're driving and navigating out the world, I turn down the radio to see better.
Yes.
It's those small things. And you've already highlighted a few of those key elements, but what are some of the specific needs in technology for different impairments for visual or auditory or cognitive or motor? And what are some of the main considerations when we're looking to address them?
Yeah, definitely. When we talk about accessibility, we have to remember that we're considering the humans, the people with these impairments. So people are all different. There's a lot of different scenarios to consider, but a few examples that I always refer to is maybe, for instance, someone who has an auditory impairment might need transcripts or captions for video or other audio media. But additionally, people might want the ability to control the audio content that supports them, or have options for text-based interactions, and all of this helps them to be able to communicate more quickly and easily. I also, we talk about individuals with cognitive impairments. They might want something that's very clearly organized and structured content that's very consistent and predictable. And honestly, that well-organized content designed well ends up just being better for all of us. Um, People with cognitive impairments might also want options for the way that they can navigate content, or having instructions in plain language. Somebody with a physical impairment might want access to keyboard navigation, and so therefore it's very helpful to have orientation cues when someone's navigating throughout a keyboard. But also considering that they might need more time. They might need sufficient time to respond due to their mobility, and have actions that the website takes be very consistent, very predictable. People with visual impairments might, again, we talked about this earlier, but might rely on magnification to support low vision. So they'll need control over text sizes. Color contrast can be really important. Also, if they're using a screen reader, there needs to be text alternatives that are programmatically determined, and a keyboard support is essential for using a screen reader as well.
Hmm. And hearing you talk about it, it sounds like these are going to be a lot of design based decisions that we need to incorporate in various stages of a project. How do we ensure that accessibility is considered from the start of a project and not just an afterthought down the road?
Yeah, I always say that it's very important to take time to plan for accessibility. If you consider the accessible features that you might need to include in your project, your map, or your app, you do all of that at the very beginning, you can save yourself a lot of time and rework at the end of the project. So again, when the topic of planning, I really like to encourage people to start with a purpose in mind of, what do I really want to communicate with this map or app? What am I trying to give out to my audience? It can really help you to consider your audience. What are their needs for accessibility? What are their potential interactions with technology? And then after you identify your purpose, sketch out some initial ideas for a design, you can go back and you can go through and consider, where are the areas where accessibility is going to be needed. It's important to also share these ideas with others, to collaborate and refine your ideas and get feedback, and consider what might be missing so that you can better include more accessibility. And then as you're drafting a new design, again, planning for the data that will be included and how to make it accessible. Test your prototype out with other audiences, get their feedback. I really think it's important to include others in the design and development process, because it's so easy for us to design for someone exactly like ourselves. But accessibility is all about thinking about people from other people's perspectives and considering their needs. So then you need to look and see, where are these accessibility best practices that I can insert, and continue to review them as you go through the development process.
And I think it's important that you bring up planning. I find both like when I've made apps and things that I dive right into getting started. I want to quickly achieve the goal, but sometimes that planning stage gets missed. So I think having that built in as part of the process and knowing that we bring those in at the start is important. But I'm wondering, for those that are the type of person who jumps right into a project, what are some best practices that developers and designers should be following to build those accessible digital experiences?
Yeah, there's so many I could talk about. I could, there's the topic of accessibility can be very deep, but I think one of my biggest recommendations for best practices is always going to be training and education. Accessibility can almost be like learning a new programming language. So it's important to take the time to gain skills and understanding of the technical criteria and what they mean. watch videos of people using a screen reader, download a screen reader, turn it on, see what it sounds like, set aside your mouse, see what some of your daily work would be like if you had to rely on only a keyboard. Another best practice is to, when you're designing some of these maps and apps, is really focus on keeping maps very clear and concise and organized. Keep it very simple and direct. Too much information might result in a lack of clarity and a lack of understanding of the map's purpose. It might confuse people. So, I talked about planning for accessibility, but I think it really takes time and planning to consider exactly what your design needs to include. Um, Another best practice that I don't think we talk about enough is continuing to monitor feedback about your maps and apps. Once you're
Mhm.
done, a big part of accessibility is accepting and understanding feedback from users, tracking that feedback, making sure things get fixed and remediated, and continuing to maintain that map or app as you're working on it.
The feedback portion, I think, is really key here. We constantly will ask, like, hey, can someone else just take a quick look at it? I often share my apps and maps with a coworker to make sure, like, great, is the sharing done properly that you can see it? Is it properly set up? Does it look fine? Does it function at a very high level? But it makes sense that taking that step further to test with accessibility and various considerations is the next step that we need to go to. I'm wondering, how do you recommend teams do that testing for accessibility? Is it automated tools or manual testing or user feedback?
I think all three of those are really important. And I think it's about testing throughout the development lifecycle that's really key to accessibility. So, when you're creating your application and you're working on your map, when you're checking for accessibility frequently throughout the development, you can catch those issues that you're able to fix early on in the process rather than having to go back and rework something after the project is completed. And you mentioned automated testing. Automated testing is really good for testing throughout the project because you can get those quick checks, get some instant feedback. It's not going to catch every single thing because automated testing does only catch about 50% of the issues, but it is really great for working it during the development life cycle. And then once you have a really good working version, you can start doing some manual testing. You can set aside your mouse and do some keyboard navigation. You can turn on a screen reader and see how it works. And all of those kind of parts are important to do throughout. I do think end user testing is one of the most valuable and impactful forms of accessibility testing. It's not done often enough because it can take time, takes effort to coordinate.
Mhm.
But I really recommend it. Maybe you've got a couple of apps. Maybe you're building some templates for some apps and you want to see and review them with people. Gather people who are your users who are out using your apps, maybe some people who rely on assistive technologies or have a lived experience with a disability and get their feedback because that will be really educational for the way that you even think about designing the next app.
Mhm. And I think, again, the emphasis on the user testing, I know something that I personally find helpful is getting somebody who isn't used to the format of GIS applications or Esri technology. Like, what do we use as the logic for button clicks? And asking someone else to give me, what is your first impression of a page? It sounds like that kind of methodology would fit well here, but just taking it further, making sure we get that bigger picture.
Yeah, and I really think that there's a good opportunity to just learn about how other people are using technology. It's definitely an eye-opening process to learn how somebody uses a screen reader. I was working with somebody recently who is a blind individual. They rely on a screen reader. The screen reader was going so fast that I couldn't comprehend the words. And that was something that I didn't understand as to how that screen reader user was using the screen reader. So it's definitely always educational.
Hmm. Now, thinking about that further, what are some good ways for individuals to learn more or get that hands on experience with accessibility?
Definitely. I feel like I said this earlier, but I feel like accessibility can be like learning a new language. It's something that I wasn't aware of before I started working on it, and it's something that requires almost constant education. So I always encourage people to just continue to educate themselves about accessibility. I do this. I think that there's always new technology, there's new considerations that I hadn't thought about before. So it's important to kind of continue educating yourself. I know that Esri has some new training that we have available in the Esri Academy called the Digital Accessibility Fundamentals. This is really great to help you get started with the basics. We show how to work on accessibility considerations into a map, uh, how to do app creation that's accessible. We give really practical tips for configuration of apps. But in addition to Esri resources, there's some really good online conferences and summits that are a great place to learn about accessibility. Axe DevCon by DQ and the Microsoft Ability Summit are two online conferences. They're free to attend, and it's always interesting to kind of gain some insight from even different industries. Maybe they aren't presenting about how to create an accessible map, but they're talking about how accessibility is affected in different industries. It's always very interesting. Um, and there's some recorded sessions from some past Esri user conferences where we talk about accessibility across ArcGIS. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to understand and learn that's free.
Hmm. And I appreciate those call outs. We'll make sure to include all of those wonderful resources in our show notes. I know there's a few in there that I already want to go check out myself. But in there, you mentioned the need to stay up to date on new technologies and things that change. Looking to the future, what trends or innovations in accessibility are you most excited about?
I feel like I've been really lucky to see some of the projects that are happening across the Esri family. And one project that I thought has been really interesting to see develop is the use of 3D printed or tactile maps. One of my colleagues is currently working on some 3D printed maps, and they are researching the process to be able to create some example templates, even that they can provide and people who are using ArcGIS Pro could start using. And the use of 3D printing to create a tactile experience of a map has so many different implications. And I think that, as even the cost of 3D printing is becoming more reasonable, I could see this technology being used to better support people with disabilities. I really also like the tactile maps that the team from the Esri Netherlands and Dutch Cadastre have created. Really, really cool. I have one here in my office, and I always like to share it with people. But they've created this process to create a map in ArcGIS Pro, and it's printed out with raised bumps on the page, and the heat is applied to the paper. It's a special paper, and it makes these raised bumps. It's pretty cost efficient, easy way to create kind of a tactile map. And I believe that there's a new book out from Esri Press that details the process and their research. And the book is called Tactile Mapping Cartography for People with Visual Impairments. So, highly recommend to check that out.
I think that's really cool seeing where we're going with that technology. I remember seeing a presentation from Esri Netherlands about the work that they've been doing. So hearing that it's continuing is great. And both the tactile and the 3D printed maps, you can already see like how could these be used in urban planning consultations and community consultations of when we're looking at a space, great, on a picture or a video, how can we also feel the space? Gives me a lot of ideas.
I think parks and like national parks and even
Mhm.
like city and state parks could also have, something that's printed out. Maybe there's a trail that's damaged, and so they want to make sure that people are aware of it. They could print one out like on the fly and share it, and it could be, with recent information too,
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of great uses for some mapping in the future
for
in this
sure.
space. Now, in your view, thinking again of the future and all these developments that are happening, how might AI reshape the future of digital accessibility, both in terms of opportunities and challenges?
Yeah, I think AI is definitely another innovation where accessibility can be supported. But it's important, again, accessibility considerations have to be taken into account from the beginning. It has to be planned for. I think there's some really great opportunities to include using AI for helping to people to navigate technology that they might not be familiar with or have a better understanding of the data that's being presented. And I think there's a couple of AI assistants that are being implemented in Esri products that will help you find the right tools using just the natural language input. You can ask, where is this tool? And it'll point you to it. And this is really great, not only for people who are just new users of technology, not really sure where to look for this tool, but also for people who have cognitive impairments. Maybe they need help navigating the features. There's a lot that's going on, and they might want a little bit of guidance. There's also been some research on AI-driven image recognition that can support creating alternative text for images. And I know that the ArcGIS Story Maps team has a feature in beta. There's some other teams that have beta features that are testing the capabilities for creating alternative text for images and maps that'll support people using screen readers. And I think the biggest challenge with AI is to make sure that it's not excluding people with disabilities in the way that they're being navigated through the AI interface, as well as the way that the AI models are being uh, trained. And if the AI systems, they can inherit some biases if they're not trained properly, which can lead to outcomes that could exclude people with disabilities. So, unless there's standards that focus on the accessibility aspect of AI, this could, it could create some inconsistencies. There could be legal risks. So, all of that has to just be taken into consideration.
I think that ethical use of AI and analysis in general is a really important area to continue exploring both as users, but also as producers of the tools. So it's great to hear that there is a space of that we're considering and we're being mindful of. But thinking more again to that future of accessibility, what does the future of accessibility look like in the context of spatial data and mapping technology? I know we've touched on it a little bit, but what do you see the landscape looking like?
Yeah, I think that the future is really about the research and development of technologies and features that support accessibility, but that also support a better overall user experience. Mapping technologies have, of course, historically been separate from the conversation around accessibility because it was assumed to be a visual medium. It would never be accessible. But there's a lot of efforts where research with people with disabilities, about people with disabilities, are changing that narrative. So, for instance, we're exploring how can we use AI to help create map descriptions that, and while that really helps support screen reader users, it'll also be important for all people who are learning about data and how the map can be interpreted. Um, Another area that I think warrants some research is the use of sonar or audio feedback in maps to explore, not only just a 2D map space, but 3D spaces, virtual spaces, AR, VR spaces. I think all of that's really important. And some of it comes down to these radical technologies that we want to implement for new features, but some of it comes down to making sure that we're designing really well and thinking about accessibility throughout the entire process.
Mm-hmm. And I think those are great words to think of going into our future. That takes us to our last question. What advice would you give to users looking to bring accessibility to the forefront of their design process?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but plan ahead for accessibility. This is such an important thing. Make sure that you are thinking about it from the beginning of the project. Focus on the areas where you can make the most impact. Does everything have alternative text? Does everything have good headings and labels and good color contrast? Those make a huge impact. Um, I've said it again too, but testing throughout the design and development process. This is so important to make sure that you're staying on track with your accessibility goals. If you've planned for it now, let's make sure that you're actually carrying it out. And again, seeking out user feedback, listening to your users, understanding what changes, what features, what information do I need to have that supports their understanding of the map or the app that you've published. All of that comes to really, again, planning ahead, thinking about your users.
Fantastic. And a huge thank you again to Jessica for sharing her insights, expertise, and passion for making digital spaces more inclusive with us. Remember that digital accessibility isn't just a checklist, it's a mindset, a commitment to inclusion, and a path to better experiences for everyone. Today's conversation reminded us that thoughtful design can open doors, foster independence, and make technology truly universal. Whether you're just starting your accessibility journey or deep in the work, We hope this episode gave you something to think about, try, or share. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep thinking geographically.